So I'll open the meeting officially. And it shall go. Hey.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Should we introduce everybody here so we know?
That would be,
Bill's on his way, running late. Okay, so we have one member running late, but we're gonna give you the green flag so we don't hold you up for too long.
Okay.
Hi, David Greenbaum, member of the committee.
And Board of Health
Yes, Board of Health Chair as well.
and works in Salem.
Yes, work in Salem.
Okay, that's all.
No, I was doing the whole,
Yeah. So she knows everything. She has to know. I'm Kathy Castellanos. I'm the chair on the Board of the Select Board. We changed the
Thank
name.
you. Thank you.
Gotcha.
I'm Rebecca Oldham, I'm the town administrator.
Arthur Marcos, I'm the programs and projects manager for public, well, for highway and sound. So,
Everything.
Yeah. I'm Stephanie Bartelt, I'm a member of the Trash and Recycling Committee, also Conservation Commission.
Brian Walsh, the Municipal Assistance Coordinator with the Mass DEP for Northeast District 2.
Hi, I'm Jan Dempsey, a member of this committee. Are we supposed to give everything? Also a library trustee, I'll add that in.
A little.
Let's just tell them all.
Yep. One.
fantastic. And I'm Amber Schmidt. I am the New England Zero Waste Organizer for Clean Water Action. And so I'll give you, I do have a presentation, so I can share my screen and give you a little bit of background before I do that on what I'm going to be presenting to you. So in my work with zero waste, I do kind of all zero waste initiatives. I work partially in a program of Clean Water Action called Rethink Disposable. We work with schools, restaurants, event spaces, emergency food providers to remove single-use disposables and replace them with like safe, durable, reusable alternatives. And then I also work on composting initiatives and food waste diversion. So I work with schools on share tables, sorting stations, and now also working with municipalities to try to push more of these programs forward. We've been having, as a part of the Mass Zero Waste Coalition, we have regular meetings with Kathy Mirza, where we're identifying ways that we need to be reducing waste. We're also, we've influenced the Priority Climate Action Plan that does now reflect food waste as a climate contributor from the methane that's released as it decomposes in landfills. And so this is, so I reached out because we are putting together municipalities across the region who want to, you know, join forces and say, we need more funding, we need more support, we want to, you know, increase our food diversion. And we need to do that now, especially because we need to reach that 2030 solid waste master plan for the entire state. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is kind of what that campaign is and why we're spearheading that campaign and what we're looking at for municipalities. And then I'll leave some time for questions after, because I know there'll definitely be some. Okay. Great. Can everyone see the screen?
Yep.
Fantastic. Yes. So Clean Water Action in the coalition with MassPIRG and Frontier Group have launched a campaign called Plate to Planet to increase food diversion in Massachusetts. What we know, right? This is probably all not news to you here, but just a good overview, right? Massachusetts produces nearly 1 million tons of food waste each year. Massachusetts also has the highest tipping fees in the nation. Landfills are one of the largest sources of methane pollution in the state. In fact, EPA data tools show that landfills are the second highest methane emitter in the state, just under natural gas
Hmm.
production. And I can share that tool with you, and I can share where we've gotten this information from as well. We did release a paper, a report that has all of this cited. And what we know is that we must more than double our diversion of organic waste throughout the next 5 years to actually be able to meet that 2030 solid waste master plan, right? And it is a lofty goal, but it's one that we have in writing and that we should be really pushing towards. So, one big problem we know, we need to expand efforts to divert food waste from landfills, but of course, we lack the infrastructure and funding to develop these types of tools to do so. Specifically, local and regional systems for collection and processing of food waste into what we define as valuable resources. And I'll talk a little bit about the best ways of food diversion and some of the lesser optimal choices for food diversion in a minute. We also know that a recent US Census survey found that almost 22% of Massachusetts households with children do not have access to sufficient or quality food. And that number is obviously higher for households without children. So the best practices that we see, we follow the EPA's wasted food scale. So food recovery and donation is the most ideal. So recovering and donating uneaten, unopened food. There is FDA law that makes sure that you are not held liable for anything as long as you're donating food in good faith. So there's a lot of differences between those best by dates, those sell by dates. All of that is really arbitrary. And so one misconception that a lot of households have is that they don't want to be held accountable or get sued if they were to donate food to a food pantry and someone were to get sick with that. FDA law actually says that can't happen. It protects that person. And it's really up to those establishments to, before they disseminate the food into the public, to make sure that that food is fit for consumption, right? That's not on the person donating the food. Of course, you wouldn't be donating things that are moldy, etc. The second best is to donate food to farms. So food that's not fit for human consumption can be donated to farms. Depends what, where you're located in the state, how easy that is. But it is a really good option. And a lot of farmers love to get free food for their pigs and stuff. So then the last one, of course, is composting. So increasing access and infrastructure. We're also looking at municipal, residential, and commercial programs. So a lot of towns have been using RDP funds to expand curbside compost collection. We want to see even more funding and access. We want to see more participation. My understanding from talking with a lot of municipalities is a lot of those curbside programs really took off for a period of time, and now they've kind of held stagnant, right? We only have so many people who've signed up. We're not getting any more people on board. We need to be really expanding those programs to meet what we need to in that solid waste master plan. Of course, the big question is, what about anaerobic digestion, right? Massachusetts increased more than fourfold the anaerobic digesters in the food waste process at anaerobic digesters in Massachusetts because they provided a lot of financial support, especially through clean energy programs. But the big concern that we have is, again, this is on the very lowest rung of the EPA wasted food scale, right? So anaerobic digestion is not the top answer. It is the bottom answer for things that can't be recovered, can't be donated to farms, and can't be composted. Serious concerns. Obviously, I'm sure folks in this room have heard of PFAS chemicals, those forever chemicals. Places like Cambridge, who do curbside composting, it's not being composted, it's going to a sewage treatment facility. So it then makes all of this very useful material that can be used to create healthier soils, and just completely gets rid of that benefit to it. And there are a lot of places that are starting to come up with laws to prevent the spraying of that type of waste on agricultural lands because they've had issues with PFAS chemicals. Specifically, I know that there was a farm in Maine that they had used, sewage fertilizer for their fields. PFAS chemicals went from our bodies into that waste, into the soil, came up in the grass. The cows ate that, and then PFAS was in the milk detected of the cows. So it's a really, really hard chemical to get rid of. And anaerobic digestion just really complicates that whole problem when it comes to what do we do with food waste. So what we need, reduction targets. We used to lead the nation, but we've kind of fallen behind. Both California and Vermont require the diversion of all food waste from landfills and have taken important steps to make sure that excess food is used first, right? Healthy people, healthy soil. And although they're ambitious targets and can be challenging to meet, it has forced them to take that on and to really rethink their waste stream. Solutions. These are our solutions, and we're obviously open to many others and in collaboration with Mass DEP and figuring all of these out. But, we'll start with targeting the top of the wasted food scale. So a coherent strategy to address the disposal of food waste, backed by significant financial resources, can bring change. If we were to divert a lot of the resources that have been put into anaerobic digestion and steered that towards municipal composting programs, we can see rapid expansion in the state. Focus on composting. Again, we don't want to focus on false solutions. It's really important that we're reducing the methane emissions and restoring our soils. And then again, to kind of get back to that PFAS, keeping toxics out of the food waste stream. We don't want to be contaminating what is good food waste that can make healthy soil by inserting toxic chemicals, microplastics, etc. We want to expand food collection, so help cities and towns launch food scrap collection programs, improve participation in existing programs through education efforts. There is a town ordinance, I believe, in Winthrop. They have been looking at implementing a mandatory curbside compost program. So lofty, but we realize, especially with the Saugus incinerator having been open for such a long time, that it's really needed. And then again, just to reiterate, providing adequate funding. So we cannot just rely on RPD funds every year for towns to be using that for more collection bins. RDP money should be used for a wide variety of waste reduction, including installing dishwashers in schools and helping with other programs. So we need to find consistent, reliable, dedicated sources of funding to continue this transition. So some of the things that I'm interested to hear from you, and the question portion of this is what your town is doing. I've been meeting with municipalities across the state, and I'd like to get a sense of where your town is. So are you composting in schools? Are you composting back of house? Are you composting in the cafeterias with sorting stations? Do you have curbside composting and or municipal drop-off locations? Do you have pay-as-you-throw systems, or are there any other policies to reduce waste? And then a lot of cities and towns realizing that places like Black Earth, it costs money. So there are municipalities looking at local and regional municipally owned composting sites, ones that can be managed by the town. A good example of an area looking at this type of model would be New Bedford. So New Bedford has a municipally owned landfill. They are extremely dedicated to preserving that landfill. And so, you know, they don't actually have space within the city to site a compost facility. And of course, a large portion of New Bedford is environmental justice. So we want to think about cumulative impacts before we just go putting a composting site somewhere. But there's efforts to start conversations about what could something regional look like. So I'm interested just in those kind of points to hear what your town is doing. And then making a difference. So what we're doing at the Plate to Planet campaign is working with municipalities to urge Mass DEP to prioritize these composting programs. Like as I mentioned, we've released a report highlighting the need for food waste diversion, and basing that off the EPA's wasted food scale. We have a letter to Commissioner Bonnie Heupel that was drafted with help from municipalities to address a lot of the issues around, local issues with, what maybe your stuff goes to a waste to energy facility. And so, the methane is being captured at some point. Even in those situations, food deteriorates at a much quicker scale than can be captured by that methane. So it is already being released before that methane can actually be captured from those pipes. But I would love to share the updated version of the letter with you. What we are looking to do is have folks from different municipalities sign on to say, yes, Mass DEP, we see a need, our town sees a need, and we want you to start helping provide more funding, more support, more educational tools, and more programs so that we can start expanding what we're already doing. And I can also share with you the actual report. I'll share with you the letter. And then we also have another letter of which we just had nonprofit and community groups sign on. So we have one for the nonprofit community side, and then this one, which is, really we want it to come from municipalities. And that is the end. So thank you for letting me share. And so are there any questions for me? And I'll go ahead and send over those right now. So if you have time during the meeting, you can take a look at them.
Well, I guess I'm wondering, I thought I read that Hamilton has mandatory compost curbside pickup, and they have a farm or something nearby that does it for them.
Yes, it's in our report, and they've actually reduced the cost of their waste hauling, I believe, by half.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
What?
yeah.
Half.
Yes. Then I also heard, and this is from my little tennis group, a teacher from the Newburyport school system said that they are sorting, the kids are actually sorting in the cafeteria. They're using everything that could be recycled, and they sort their waste into the different buckets. And they're doing that in the school. Our schools, we're trying to push it, but they're kind of resistant. I kind of feel like we have to get some video of a model where this is working or something.
I saw some
Because
handouts.
I mean, I asked at my school and to start it in the cafeteria, and I gave them a proposal on it. Whittier is a high school. We have our own, what do you call it? We have our own cafeteria, obviously, and we also have our own restaurant. And
Oh.
so the Black Earth was like, oh, we have a person that deals just with that kind of stuff. And I connected everybody as I left school last year, and yep, that one. I think there was some look up faces like, well, how long will that stay here? Kind of. And then I watched them like taking the trash out the back of the school, because that's one of the doors we use to get out, the dumpster door. And it's a lot of dumpster stuff going out the back door. And you might say, oh, well, whatever, in the case of a, 20 million plus school budget, what is that? But, the Newburyport example, if there's others like that, I think that's what schools need to see. I mean, they need to see how it's working in a school.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hamilton.
Oops, sorry.
Newburyport, I
Isn't-
know,
The cafeteria stuff right there.
There's some other schools, North Andover.
Oh, okay, so they're doing it too, yeah.
Lexington, yeah, there's a lot. I don't know if anyone here is on the Mass DEP Green Sword group. It's a school waste reduction and diversion working group.
Look at her face.
No, but
Yeah,
there's
no.
It's awesome. There was a meeting today.
Yeah.
We know
Yes,
what it
and
means.
so I lead the reuse subgroup. So there's like 4 subgroups. There's event, there's policy, there's organics, so composting, and then reusables. Because again, part of my work with Rethink Disposable is to reduce single-use disposables, which also saves schools money. And one thing that I am Corey, I've been Corey fingerprinted, and I'm more than happy to come into cafeterias and train with students and show how sorting stations can work. I do that. I will also add, I work in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. So I have a lot of knowledge about what works in other areas and what doesn't. For example, in Rhode Island, we do have a food waste ban, and schools are not exempted from that. And they most of them do actually fall under what the ban is. So they're supposed to, but of course, nothing's enforced, right? Because Department of Health isn't going to go around and start giving out, fines to schools that are already suffering with budget losses. Yeah, so good that they're not, but so I work closely with a nonprofit that's sprung up here in response to that called Rhode Island Schools Recycling Project. And we go into schools, and they've actually done teachings where you teach students to be the rangers. So instead of having, in North Andover, I know that they say, oh, we need more green volunteers, right? We need more people in the cafeteria to help with these sorting stations. There are ways to do this at schools where students actually take on that responsibility. But yeah, so the other thing that we talked about today on the DEP group is that if you're looking at doing composting in the school, and funding is an issue for that, right? How do we pay for this? Well, you can actually put a public drop off at a school on municipal property, and the school can then access that for free, and residents pay a small portion to cover the pickup fee. And doing that on a school will also add points when you're looking at your RDP. So if you were to do that, it would be no cost to the school, and you would be able to see the rewards of the points being generated. So it's one way. So there's a lot of different solutions. And that's kind of why I'm talking with municipalities, like, how can we get this going? How can we create models to show Mass DEP that it's doable, that we need more support?
I got a quick question. So you said in Hamilton, they reduced their waste by half. Well, how is that program set up? They get it picked up from their homes? Is it drop off? How do they get rid of their composting materials?
So I haven't looked closely into that. I did not write the report. Again, we're in like a large coalition. I'd be more than happy to look into that and give a follow-up on all that. But I do believe it's curbside along with their trash and recycling pickup.
By the farm, I think. I think that there's a farm, right?
Farm actually picks it up itself.
I believe so, yeah.
But it's curbside, I think.
It's I know it's curbside, yeah.
In what, paper bag or something?
Oh, well,
Whatever
like,
container.
I'm doing the one with Black Earth, so they give you the bags. I mean, I'm paying monthly. My husband's like, why are we doing this? But I did it because I wanted to know firsthand
Yeah.
what happens when you do this. First of all, I can tell you, if you keep it for 2 weeks in the summer, it leaks through the bags. So you might want weekly pickup because it does get smelly, but they gave me the container and it does lock tight. And then we just use any old container in the kitchen, but they give you a smaller bag for that.
Oh.
And then a bigger bag that's can be composted for the big can. And then they can come once a week. You just put it out. They give you your day. They even send me a reminder email. It's so cute. And then they tell you, you can look on your account and you can see how much you're diverting. Like, oh, yeah. So they might know for the town of Groveland already.
And it's all food waste.
Yes, and paper towel, like, I guess paper towels that you swipe things with, food stuff, not like.
Motor oil.
Yeah, but like food
The
greasy stuff.
great thing is that it can also
Yeah.
take meat and stuff as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what you don't want to put in your backyard compost, you can
Yes.
actually put in the Black Earth. Bin.
Yes. is literally everything out of the fridge that you would throw out, so.
I love the idea of thinking about, she said something about regional collaboration. What if we got together with other towns instead of just thinking about like our own little compost area? What if we got together with other towns and had a regional site?
But,
Maybe we could share the cost then.
but Black Earth.
True,
is
yes.
I mean, they have a good system, if they can, they
So
open up.
something
to
that they,
problem.
something that they did in Manchester by the sea was Manchester agreed to give them space to have a facility, to have like pile up facility.
Yeah.
And then so Manchester doesn't pay for curbside composting.
Right, so
They
we,
just gave it to all their
yeah, there's a
residents.
couple of things they
And they're
said.
looking to do that.
Right, like,
across the
if we
state.
kept the containers that they give out here, so that they didn't have to drive down to hand out to new customers. That would be taken into account, I guess, right? The bags and stuff that they have to drop off.
No, you have to, containers would not buy almost. What, the resident buys them or you did?
Well, yeah, you get it with your setup kit, so it's like, I think it was like $80 the setup, so that's gonna,
And
a lot of people are-
there was DEP grant funding to subsidize the cost though.
Okay, good,
Right.
because not everybody can
but
afford.
again, if most people will be like, my husband, like, I'm already paying for trash pickup. Why are we paying for this? I'm like, well, because I wanted to see how this would work firsthand. How else are you gonna know? What happens, how these bags work and, you know, I'm a person that does nothing special, so, yeah, the bag leaked. I can tell you, if it's summertime.
Yeah, because it's a compost.
If you
bag,
go to
so
the
it's-
dive, you know, every other week pickup, it starts to stink. So weekly is probably the way to go.
Hi, Amber. I have a quick question for you. Most of the municipalities you've named are, they have, the school system is the town.
Yeah.
We have a regional school district here. Have you worked with those before to get a regional school district to get on board with, you know, the segregated waste? And how has that worked?
I haven't worked directly with a regional school, but I have one in Connecticut. It's like a tri-town school, you know, pretty rural. It really just means bringing all the stakeholders together. And the good thing with that is that when you get all the towns on board, they're all going to see the benefits of savings. So, you know, moving to reusables will often save schools quite a bit of money. In Connecticut, I'm working with a district of 10 schools. They're going to see $100,000 a year in savings across the district. And that's including an added $30,000 of labor. And it is not and this is to move to reusables. It is not including another potential savings of around $34,000 for waste hauling. If we can reduce their pickup for trash by 1 pickup per week per school, they'll see an additional $34,000. So a lot of these programs work really well in conjunction with other zero waste initiatives. So by moving to reusables, you actually create funding that can pay for services like Black Earth, and then you can also see an even more significant reduction in the waste hauling fees, which doesn't always mean those fees aren't always paid for by the schools. So oftentimes when you're looking, like the food nutrition director is really only looking at like what's going to impact their budget. So that can be a difficult sell when working with the schools, but the DPWs do see that, right? The town itself does see it, and eventually that does make its way back a little bit into the school budget as, you know, the town pays for those tipping fees. So it's not something that I would say like is a huge barrier. And I would imagine that if it's a regional, you guys are all probably fairly close, you know, with the other regions as well. And they are probably also likely in the same kind of situation that you are, of wanting to move this forward, not necessarily knowing how, not necessarily knowing like, where do we get the funding to do this? How do we get the data? How do we compile all of this? And so that's something that I like to help towns do, is a cost savings waste reduction audit that can take a look at all those numbers and just put those numbers out there so you can actually see what that looks like.
When you talk about reusables, are you meaning like you don't want the students throwing everything out?
Correct. Yeah. So a lot of schools are still using styrofoam trays. Many are. A lot of them have switched over to compostable 5-compartment trays.
Yeah, they have, yeah.
Which is good if you're paying for a compost service. But if
Yeah.
you're not, they are still just going into a landfill and they're costing the school more money. And unless they're identifying that they're BPI certified, they can likely contain PFAS chemicals. So the real goal is like all zero waste. So moving to stainless steel trays. We just heard today on the Mass DEP call that Bedford is moving to reusable trays. New Bedford has done reusable trays and moved to a case study. I'm working with Lexington schools to get some SMRP funding, so the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program grant funding, to install dishwashers. One thing that I also encourage towns is whenever we're looking at renovating schools, or if you have a school that's going to need new construction and it's going to need to be rebuilt, making sure that we're putting in dishwashers for cafeteria reuse into those plans. It's much cheaper to install a dishwasher that can handle cafeteria reusables than to just install a pots and pans dishwasher that can only be used by back of house. Even if you're not planning on using reusables right away, it's much more costly to have to try to retrofit a space. And then you have all these issues with, the kitchen staff be like, we don't have the room for this. This was over here and now it's over there, and it gets very complicated. So having some foresight into what is the next 30 years going to look like, right? Where do we need our town, our schools to be in 30 years? And that is composting and using reusables. It's not just composting in schools, it's share tables, right? That is a very simple, low-hanging fruit that every school can do. And there's a lot of good programs out there. I can help set that up, but just taking food that is unopened and uneaten, mainly from a lot of those elementary school kids, that they have to have like a well-balanced, nutritious meal, right? And getting a table, getting a small fridge, or coordinating with the kitchen to be able to collect those items, give them back to students that are hungry, right? We know how many people are food insecure. We know that students learn better when they're not thinking about food and they're full. And there's a lot of great success stories about share tables. So again, it's not just about composting. It's not just about one thing or the other. It's really a comprehensive approach to sustainability and zero waste. And it's just about moving the needle in the places where we can move it right now, and showing how we can do more when we get more support, when we get more funding, when that becomes available. And that will become available, right? Because again, as I mentioned, we did put in the Priority Climate Action Plan for the greater Boston area, food as a climate contributor, which means that when CPRG money becomes available, climate pollution reduction grant money becomes available, if that's written into your plan, you can actually get grant funding for those specific programs. This is what we need to be thinking about now, right? And that's why I'm really trying to work with municipalities. You don't want to get left in the dust, right? Especially when there's an opportunity for potential funding coming around. And the best way to make sure that you're going to be able to get that funding if needed is to show that you've already started the progress, right? Most places aren't going to say, you've done absolutely nothing and everything's going in the trash, so here's $3 million to do curbside composting, right? That's no way, right? But if you can show we've done this, we've done this, we've done this, we have a need, we have experience, we're able to do it, you're more likely to be able to get that funding. And we also help write grants as well. So, we have a director of operations, we write grants all the time. Again, just wrote one with Lexington to get their SMRP funds from Mass DEP. Still waiting to hear back on that. So yeah, so there's a lot.
So I have a question around the grants. Are we to anticipate that the grants are gonna cover all costs? Say we need to install a dishwasher, or we, like you said, $3 million to do curbside composting, that the grant is gonna cover 100% of that, or is the town gonna have to kick in funding? Are we gonna have to expect to put out funding in advance to recoup those savings down the road?
It depends on the grant, there are some grants that have matching requirements. So like you would have to match the grant. If it does, it's the same as, you know, RDP funds, you know, using that for the compost bins, right? Like at some point, like you can't just use the RDP funds for that anymore, and the town is going to have to pick up that cost. But the goal is to show cost savings in other areas, that even with the town having to put in some money after that initial startup phase, like generally what we would be looking at grants for is that initial startup, right? So if in the case of a dishwasher, we were to get grant funding, which I've done for schools, to install dishwashers and get all reusables. For example, the school in Connecticut, we wrote an equipment assistance grant. They already had dishwashers, but it spent $100,000 to purchase all reusables. Yeah, the school is going to have to pay for that added extra labor off the bat, but we do ROIs all the time. So part of the cost audit that I do is a return on investment. With that school, it's within a year. For schools that would have to put that money out of pocket, the ROI is maybe 2-3 years. It's still a very short amount of time in the grand scheme of everything. And even with that added labor, again, you're still seeing that savings. So we can do the same thing and know that we've allocated X money to just do this every single year, and we're going to keep doing that. Or we can say, well, let's invest in our future, and we're actually going to see savings. And if we can get a grant to cover that initial startup, then you're in an even better spot, right? Then you don't have to sell that longer term investment, you know, to the town.
It's the investment in the short term that I think worries people.
Yes,
You know?
yeah, it definitely does. And that's why getting numbers together is helpful, and also starting small. I don't do this work and come into a room and say, like, we're going to revamp it, you know, let's redo everything. You guys are, you know, it's like, start small. Like I said, if you're not able to do the composting yet in schools because there's difficulty, start with a share table, get kids used to that, then slowly incorporate it, right? It's not a quick fix, but you know, a lot of places are moving in this direction, and I want to be there to help encourage other places too, so that, again, if there is funding available, you're aware of it, because you're not going to be aware of it if you're sitting back going, let's just buy disposables and continue to do that, right?
So
It's unsustainable.
in terms of them looking at a community like us, like we have, as you see, we have a committee that's all volunteers working towards our next trash and recycling contract, right? So we're already talking about, you know, the automated pickup, limiting the size of the barrels, and eventually moving to pay as you throw bags. We're thinking step by step, because if we throw too much at once, I don't know that we got good cooperation on recycling, but right now it's in little carts, so it's all over the ground too. It's in the bin and in the street. So moving that to the carts will clean that up. I think they said our percentage of recycling is pretty good for our size town, that's good. And we do have, you can join the Black Earth, and we have, I want to say maybe 20 households in it, 25. It's not that many, because you have to pay the startup cost and the monthly fee. So it has to be something you really,
Somebody with disposable income.
well, yeah, I mean, what I can say is that, like, when you look at the weight that's in your trash can now versus what I had before, that compost bin weighs more than my trash can.
That's great.
It's like really, it's surprising to me.
How do
You
we
know,
get
yeah.
started on things like I don't have kids in the school. How do we get started on the shared table thing?
Yeah, so that's I usually would reach out to all the principals. Usually, again, you want to start in elementary schools. So identifying how many elementary schools you have, and then reaching out to the principals of each of the schools, and setting that up. If you have a green team for your schools, it's a great place to get in there. Maybe you don't, maybe it's something, I know that, Newton just used RDP funds to pay teachers to be green captains. So they're actually using the RDP funds to provide a stipend to teachers to actually be green captains in the school. I don't know that it necessarily works in that situation, because teachers are kind of already overworked as it is.
Right.
But you know, Lexington has green volunteers. So, you know, parents will go in and help with the sorting and stuff and push at PTO meetings. That's usually where I start. And again, you start with the share table. It's super easy to do. And I can absolutely help walk you through like what that looks like and training. A lot of what I like to do is the education, right? So, you know, making sure custodians usually also love when you're composting, right? Getting that buy-in because they're not lugging bags that are leaking milk everywhere, right?
Yeah.
One of the things with composting is the liquid pour bucket, really helps reduce a lot. Pay as you throw is another great kind of like way for like residential to, you know, get on board. There does have to be a lot of education that goes into it, right? Because you don't want contamination of your recycling, or if, you know, you do go with like a curbside composting for all residents, just throwing things out there and saying like, here's what it is now, because you have to pay, you will get contamination. So there's a lot of education and outreach, and a lot of materials that I can help provide. And, you know, I can also connect with resources like Recycle Works. They also offer technical assistance.
Amber, I only got the first part of your email address. What was the rest of it? Schmidt at,
Cleanwater.org.
Good for now. I think we're good for now, Amber. That's a lot of information. So
Yes.
the presentation slides you're gonna forward to Rebecca?
I can. Yes, I can. I did just send over the letters, the report, the sign-on letter, and the letter that we had for the nonprofits that signed on. So if you guys want to take a peruse through that and see if you'd like to join the campaign, we do have city councilors from Saugus, Lynn, and Revere who've already signed on. In ongoing conversations with New Bedford, again, a little difficult because they own the landfill there, as well as Taunton and Worcester, Brookline, Newton, but held off on continuing those conversations until after the election, because a lot of elected officials are really busy right now, and and sending them emails is not the foot I want to get off on during the election season. So I'll send over the PowerPoint slide right after I jump off.
I took a couple pictures of a couple of your slides. Is that okay with you?
Yes, of course. Yeah, you can share it out. This is just a slide I put together for this. We are in the work that I'm doing in this coalition. It is evolving, and so we are looking, I think, at probably making something a little nicer and branded a little bit better for the Plate to Planet campaign, but it's sufficient for now to share out.
Oh my gosh, I thought that was excellent.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
good,
you.
great. Yeah, I get a lot of presentations.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Okay, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving. So, okay, so now we're back to you.
Yeah.
Brian.
Uh,
Yeah. Oh, does everybody know our new, I want to call you our new highway guy, program and projects manager? It's like a mouthful.
I know.
Working on it.
PPM.
I don't know. We'll get it.
Acronym.
You gotta get, I'll catch you, but,
Yes, I.
Bill, have you met Arthur?
No, good.
Arthur Marshall.
Bill O'Neill, nice to meet you. Hello.
Okay.
Amongst other things, trash contract.
The new town employee?
Yes, I kind of replaced the superintendent, highway superintendent, kind of not, but.
Kind of yes, kind of no.
Yeah. I'm doing a lot of the stuff that he was doing, I'm doing.
Yeah, it is very complicated. What happened was we had an elected.
Yeah, so.
And then we
kind of
decided-
phase,
We just kind of said, okay, we'll change it to appointed, and we just
yeah.
threw it out there, and I think that. You know, it got thrown out there and we hired somebody, and then I think there was back and forth as to what this position would be or wouldn't be or going to be. But right, my, with this, you guys, you were on the board that hired our first appointed highway superintendent, right?
I was on the board that hired the first highway. superintendent.
Correct. So, yeah, so not to divert too much from our meeting, but the job came into the town from an elected position
Yeah.
where they basically defined themselves what they would do. No, I,
No, I
being honest,
understand, yeah, I
that,
mean.
you know, there was some things by law, of course, that you have to do, but overall, we could not direct an elected highway superintendent what to do.
Every 3 years we could.
Well, yeah. But yeah, you could vote, but I mean, I remember the cast of characters that would run, and sometimes I feel like, oh my God. If that person gets ever done. You know, because I mean, it's one of those.
You still have
jobs-
some of those things in town that, you know, one of these days, Tony the Pony's gonna get elected and we're all gonna regret that.
Tony the pony.
Well, I just know when I first came to town, the elected highway superintendent, his wife manned the phone in her kitchen during the snowstorms. And did you ever call the Fairbanks?
That was a long
You could
time.
call and they would get them, they said, well, nobody plowed my street yet. And she would call her husband. That's how it was done,
And
yeah.
then we have Arthur, and Arthur has been great, and we're focusing more on
Yep.
administrative and projects and programs specifically, so that we can create a structure that allows us to be more efficient overall, and so people know exactly where they can go for resources, and that when you can't just dig
Yeah.
up a road, you have to go through a formal process, and so that we're ensuring that all of the monies that we do spend on our roadways and infrastructure are done correctly, and that there's a approval process that they must go through, so.
Right,
Arthur's hit the ground running. He's been great, and he's volunteered to help me a little bit more on the trash and recycling contract. He has extensive experience with IFPs and specifications and contract analysis. He's been really helpful trying to digest all of this information and try and get a better understanding of what we have before us. And he's been meeting with Brian and Ron with these meetings. We will start going over more detailed data that was requested by this committee in regards to pay as you grow. So that's kind of just a loop around as to where we are in production.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what we're doing now is trying to figure out, you know, with the new contract that might be, that we're gonna be getting, put us in the best position to negotiate a better contract. I think that's what our goal should be.
You think?
Well, I mean, not only that, we need to research and see what's out there. I mean, if we just went ahead and see what we had, we're losing money, so. We
right.
should really think about our strategy.
It's far more complicated than I ever realized.
Yeah,
I'm
and-
really honest about it. The more, every single meeting, it seems like we learn yet something else
Yes.
that we didn't think about before. And then after a while, you feel like, okay, we're gonna have to, you know, somehow start to get this into manageable
Yeah.
steps.
But I think now with Brian here, he's gonna give us one option that's gonna help with that we might be able to use, which is the pay as you throw, but I think this. It'll get more complicated than that when we start figuring out how our trash collection is gonna be in the future.
Right.
I think that's the discussion that we should have at some point soon too, like what are we gonna be with you know, automated pickup. and
Right, and I think
Contract.
what I was actually, you know, as you walk through other issues in the town, you stumble on, and I stumbled on this thing that West Newbury had running on their website that had to do with the 40B, but it was kind of nice because it was like a little bit of a running dialogue, I guess, with things you could link on. And I'm wondering if we should start to set up something like that for the trash and recycling so that
For the public to link to?
yeah, not just a bunch of links, but like a running kind of discussion that they can, because the most important thing I think that is that we want to have a positive reaction from our town. We want people to want
Buy in.
this. Yeah, I mean, we want to save them money and we want them to like what we're doing to save our money. And I mean, yes, I'm not sure we'll win over every single person, but certainly we don't want an uproar, you know, because, well, this is the way we've always done it. Why do we gotta do that now? And so I want to get that. I feel like information wise, having something up, starting maybe from now forward, like saying, this is when we started our meetings. These are all, let them know that we've had this many
But
meetings.
the more transparency, the more you talk about these
Exactly,
things, I think you
yeah.
nailed it, like, when you're making a big change like that, it's way better to be like, well, we've had 2 years of discussion and we've been totally transparent and you
Right.
gave people time to complain and
Right.
and get
Right.
or give their opinions and share their opinions and as opposed to just dropping something on
Well,
something in a year.
That's the one thing we have shied off from is doing a blanket survey because we felt like we have only one reasonable path to save money on, so what would we survey them on?
Yeah, well, that's, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we can get into a little bit. There is like, when we
Okay.
talk about pay as you throw, there is like different ways to like structure the programs and stuff like
Okay,
that. And it's not like, you're not necessarily locked into like one way to do it. And I have some examples of towns have done it differently and
Okay.
it may not make sense to survey the town on it, but at least like within, yeah, so if it
But-
works, I can jump into the presentation
I
or,
think so, yeah, I think that's where we are on the agenda, that would be wonderful.
okay. Yeah, so first, I mean, I guess that's a good timing, was just wanted to make sure I gave kudos to Rebecca and Arthur for all the work they've been doing in this space. Not even just the pay as you throw, but the being part of the Holland Contract Best Practices Group.
Okay.
And watching webinars on recycling processing fees, which I said is just as fun as you would think it is. But yeah, having people like this in your community that are, and you, everyone here that are really diving into this is gonna be huge for Groveland. So like we said last time, we kind of where we ended last time was talking a little bit about a little bit deeper about pay as you throw and kind of bringing more details and context, applying it to Groveland. And so, but first we'll kind of like zoom out and look at pay as you throw as a whole and just kind of look at the map of in 2022. This is some change obviously since then, but you can see everything with that's hash marked out is a pay as you throw community. And the scale, the color scale is how much pounds per household are being disposed of. So you see the pay as you throw average, and the non-pay as you throw average. Yes, you
Too
can,
many, huh?
no, everything with a hash, so everything with a hash,
I'm not
everything,
understanding this
Oh,
right.
okay.
everything, yes, I can.
You're gonna have
Whether
to.
it's got a color or not, if it's got a screen on it, then
Yeah.
it's pay as you.
There'll be a zoom in where you can probably see it a little clearer. So if you go to the next one, so just.
Oh, I got you, I
Here.
got you.
Yeah,
It's
so-
telling you the quantities.
Yeah, the quantities. So if you
I
go,
got
yeah, so.
Okay.
So if you actually pop out one slide back, Rebecca, so you can see that where a lot of these communities that are going pay as you throw, that kind of bunched together. They
Yeah.
all start to have a lighter, more yellow color because their waste is going down. And then you can see your towns that no one's really doing pay as you throw. They often have there's a lot of red going on. So you'll see a correlation between the pay as you throw and how yellow / red is.
Okay,
So pay as you throw averaging 1,100 pounds per household, non-pay as you throw being over 1,600. So if you go to the next one and we look at the next slide. Yeah, so again, one of the things, obviously, I think Groveland's kind of in an interesting spot. They're like right on this line of some communities have done it, and you can see these numbers falling in Newbury, Ipswich, Boxford, Hamilton. But then you kind of have this whole everything to the west. There's a whole lot of red over there. So it'd be awesome to see Groveland start to being a leader in the Merrimack Valley as a
Okay.
waste reduction.
Merrimack's already up there.
The Merrimack Valley as a whole. Merrimack is in there, yeah, Merrimack is one of the communities, but you see there's a lot that we're still trying to get in here.
The North Andover, Andover.
so
Yeah,
what is, if you're explaining it like to the average
Keep it
person on the street, what's happening to make just pay as you throw?
that's such a good question, and the next couple slides will get us there, actually, so that's
'Cause I
beautiful.
mean, that's what they're gonna say to me, like,
Yeah,
I'm just gonna put it in a bag and pay more.
yeah.
What's the big deal?
Totally. So, and we'll get them like 2 slides. So, where we kind of pulled out from our last meeting was a lot of the focus of pay as you throw will probably fall into 1 or 3 of these categories.
Mhm.
It being an environmentally responsible decision to
Yeah.
do, a fiscally responsible decision for the municipality,
Yeah,
and a fair and equitable way for residents to dispose of trash. That being the sense of, should I be paying the same amount for waste as my neighbor if they produce 3 times as much as me, which is kind of the current model we're in. So then if you keep on going, we can kind of see where Groveland's situated at right now. And probably some of the important numbers on here being the bold, we can see Groveland's average tons per household is that 2,238 number. with the district average being around 1563, district being Northeast District 2. So it's everything from like the 39 communities that I work in, kind of about Melrose up to the top of the state, with
Okay.
Groveland about being as far west as it goes. And then where the tipping fee of $95 is at now. So now if we go into it, next slide, I think to your point, we can start seeing like why this is first of all, like why this is an important thing. Actually, so we'll get into it more, but first you can see that
Yeah.
just the kind of rising disposal costs going up. I mean, since 2021, seeing 26% higher in disposal costs than it was, and that's not going to change. We can get into why it's not going to change. But an important thing that I'll note here and kind of come back to is that we know how much we're paying in collection per year just to get the trucks there. It's a flat fee. But the town has no idea how much it's going to pay in disposal costs every year, because that is totally dependent on how much waste is
Right.
generated. So that is kind of a random number that can't really be, that's totally dependent on, one, the tonnage generated and the tipping cost, tipping fees. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah, and so I think one thing that I think is always helpful to think of that might help me understand pay as you throw is kind of connecting this to the utility model that I think people naturally like are comfortable with, in the sense of we have this familiarity with, oh yes, if I'm using more of a resource, then I bear some of the responsibility for paying for more of that resource. We see it with heat, we see it with water, we see it with light. I think there's a natural equity and fairness element that we all kind of like grasp with that. But when we set up trash, every municipality did it years ago. Like, it was this kind of model of, no, we pay a lump sum with the expectation that you can throw away as much as you want, and it's
Right.
essentially an unlimited service.
Yep.
And I said, like, if we kind of picture this with utilities, with water, if everyone can use an infinite amount of water,
Right.
we don't have enough water for that. So we're kind of, and we know that because water is a limited resource. But with waste, I think it kind of became this idea of waste being an unlimited thing.
Yeah.
So if you go to the next slide, so obviously it's just gonna be a picture. Waste isn't an unlimited thing. We have a limit. It goes to landfill. When you're throwing it out somewhere, it's going somewhere. There's downstream impacts of that. We'll talk a little bit more about the financial and the environmental impacts. But yeah, I think we kind of got out of this mindset that there is downstream consequence to when we put things in the trash.
Right.
It just doesn't go away from a financial perspective, and from an environmental perspective, has to be dealt with. So next one. So this, I think, really starts to get to why is waste reduction important? Why is the state like focusing on it? Why is it in this zero waste master plan? And a big piece of it is our landfill capacity is drastically decreasing. So currently, essentially what's going to happen is the waste is going to continually either go to a waste to energy facility, or we're gonna ship it out of state. We have no new permitting in the state to build new waste to energy facilities. So this means an increasing amount's going to get shipped out of state. It's often shipped to Ohio, Alabama, New Hampshire. So this kind of tied in, this shrinking capacity is going to continue to create these more like rising and unpredictable disposal costs.
Okay, but when we see like contracts, they seem to indicate that our trash is going to an incinerator, right? Isn't that what one of
It
those?
is.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the way,
Building.
that's the waste energy, that's the waste energy facilities.
so.
That'll still be there, but they're not gonna build more of them to accommodate the increase in
Trash.
trash.
Oh,
When we're
but-
talking about,
so-
and yeah,
So the waste to energy plant has a limit for the day, doesn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, and there's only so many trucks that can go there.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
loud, sorry.
Oh, sorry. So, okay, so. When they know, like, do the haulers know when they're not gonna be able to bring any more trash to that plant?
Well, I think that they know which towns they have. And more so, they're not gonna be able, like, not every town can have an agreement with
Right.
that facility, because they can only bring in so many trucks a day. So it's not like, and sometimes they will like turn away trucks and bring them to other facilities, but it's less about, like, so it's true, your trash in this contract will likely continue to go to a waste
Ours
energy
gets
facility.
diverted. Ours gets also diverted sometimes.
It does?
Yes.
How would we know
It
that?
says it on the bill.
It's the diverted tons.
So they'll, yeah,
Just meant they went to another
Yeah,
incinerator.
that's
But
for that
they-
reason.
because it's-
It's full.
Yeah,
Oh, because the one's
Or
full.
full or in line, or there's reasons for it, but yeah, they can't take.
There's a finite amount of how much you can burn in a day and an hour.
Okay,
So once you reach that capacity, the trash either needs to be diverted or it's stored on site to be burned at a later, and
Okay.
that's,
yeah.
I can only do so much of that.
so we don't know, like, if in our next contract, we don't really know.
It doesn't,
that.
it doesn't price, it doesn't affect the price.
Yeah, that's something that we talked about explicitly, making sure like, yeah, the price shouldn't change on the contract basis depending on where the tonnage goes. But if you go to the next slide, when we talk about how it affects costs and the general market, when we're kind of talking like year over year is
Okay,
naturally, as we have shrinking capacity in the state to manage waste, we're already the most expensive state to landfill in the country.
okay,
Year over year, these disposal costs are going to keep going up because we're having either finite amount of waste energy facilities or so then those rates will continue to go up, or we have to ship them out of state, or we ship them out of state. And that has its own transportation costs associated with
Okay.
it. So this is kind of the general trend is shrinking capacity and the cost of disposal is going up, and that's not a trend doesn't seem like it's going to change at all.
that's reality.
That's reality. That's why we have this master plan. That's why the state's
Okay.
setting these goals is. And so the best way to address this is to reduce the amount of waste. So reduce the amount of waste, and we'll tie into this a little bit more as pay as you throw. If you go to the next slide.
Okay.
So, because I think this kind of ties into, I think.
There's the double
I think
tax.
I think that's a concern a lot of people like bring up is this idea that it's the double tax.
Oh, yeah, we have a.
But so what I like to think about it as is, I think going back to that idea of, we know what our hauling costs going to be in a contract. The
Correct.
municipality has no idea what the disposal costs of. And but regardless of if your town has 2,000, if you keep going up and you have 2,000 next year, who knows, people decide to throw away more, you have 2,500 tons. Or there's a lot of waste reduction efforts and you have 1,500 tons, 1,000-ton difference, right?
Yeah,
You pay $103 per tipping fee. How it's set up now without pay as you throw is the municipality is responsible for that either way. The town already paid that, they already paid in their tax, so the town's responsible for that. So what's this doing is the hauling part can, you don't have to do that, can still be in the tax base if you
Yeah.
want, but you're taking this disposal cost and being like, okay, let's tie this to the generation of the waste so that we know there's enough revenue to cover these
Okay.
rising disposal costs. So there's this like perception of it being a money grab for the municipalities,
yeah.
but it's more this nature. So if you go to the next slide, I think it's really what it sets up is preventing a situation where you have to do a trash override, which
Yeah.
Groveland's has had to deal with in the past is, all of a sudden we had way more tonnage than we thought. And we have to pay for it. So it's this thing that's historically the towns is kind of at the whim and the mercy of how much trash their residents generate. So it's kind of trying to take back some control of something that's normally kind of out of control. So that's one of the main reasons for the benefits of the municipality is, okay, we're tying the generation of waste to the individual generator, the cost of waste to the generator of waste. So you can see like in 2001, 2003.
2001, hardly anybody voted.
Yeah, it's interesting. Next year, a lot
Weird.
more.
That was in
Fair enough.
June, right?
Yeah.
So we-
Yeah, and those both passed.
They're all over the pants.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
there you
right.
go. I know, I'm right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is one of the model of I think like from the municipal level, like I can get the perception of the double tax. Like, and I've been thinking a lot like about it because that was something I always heard growing up because I was in a pay-as-you-throw community. And now that I'm working in it, I'm like, oh, no, this is the municipality it's not a money grab. It's the municipality trying to just kind of like prevent a really bad situation, a tough situation from occurring. And there's actually a funny sense in the sense of at a certain point, you see pay-as-you-throw communities where it ends up becoming bad, losing money in the sense of if I had allocated in the tax base, say $100,000 for disposal costs. And then when I'm a high waste community, before pay as you throw, now all of a sudden it's $200,000. We need to cover that gap. Maybe it's an override. There's that. But then say 10 years later, now you're generating, you no longer have that $1,000 from the tax base, and it's only $80,000 worth of disposal. You actually would have been better off as a town having that $1,000 in the tax base. So once you get to a certain point, pay as you throw actually is like, oh, it would have been better if we did it in the tax base, because now we're such a low generating community. That's a really good problem to have in the waste, from a waste reduction standpoint. Groveland's not really near there yet. But again, so yeah, all that to say, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a money grab. And then so a little more talking about this kind of financial impact of it. The Mass DEP provides grant support depending on the program. The one that by far and away is the highest grant total is providing those 35-gallon trash carts for $30 a household. You see that $66,000 number would apply to Groveland's numbers. And then so why do we only support 35-gallon? And just kind of the understanding from the data that from a waste reduction standpoint, anything more than that tends to drive up the waste. And the basic finding here being people fill up what they have. So if you give them a 64-gallon, on average, more people are gonna tend to fill up that cart. So again, thinking of terms of water, if you were only getting charged water at a certain point, up to like you had been limited up to a certain point, and then you were charged more than that, everyone kind of has this natural incentive to, I want to get my money, I want to get my money's worth, I want to use what I have. And it's the same thing with waste. So from that perspective, the DEP tries to give the most funding to get people in those 35-gallon carts.
I think there's a concern that if we went with the 35-gallon carts, that like, would we then still have the overflow bags
Totally.
or something?
That's
like
a great, and that's a great
Some
point
people
is.
are worried about that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, like I was saying before, is there's different ways to structure this program. It's not a one size fits all. Tons of communities do it differently. Talking with Topsfield right now, they're kind of figuring out, because they, for an example, know that they kind of did data on their town and they found like, oh, most of their town will fit into the 35-gallon.
Yeah,
They have some that probably will struggle with it.
yeah.
So how do they want to handle that? They're hoping a good portion will just kind of shrink down into the 35-gallon, which will happen to a degree. But for these people that won't, do you do overflow bags? Do you have the ability to lease out a second cart?
Yeah,
So
that's
you
what
can,
I'm
so
saying,
again,
yeah.
when we talked about surveying, there's different ways to structure the program.
Yeah.
But the idea is you don't really want people to do, you want to try to get as many people to be like, okay, now I can do the 35-gallon. I wouldn't have before, but I can now. And that's the kind of the attempt, and you'll see these 35-gallon. So it's not a thing no communities have done. And I think this was from mostly updated. I think there's a few that are going in the process of going 35-gallon. So there's like Townsend, and so but mostly updated 35-gallon cart communities. And you can see, so the average waste per household for these was 1347. So again, that's even below the district average of 1500.
So if you go like the 35-gallon cart route, let's say you said that, and but then you wanted to give an option somehow through pricing to people, we give you that first one, but the second one, we're gonna have to charge you this fee per year.
And I think that those are
Yeah.
those are
So-
totally the conversations
Yeah,
that's like,
some small fee, but I mean a fee because the cart, I mean, you're still buying the bags, right?
so you kind of just want to balance that with.
Or is that
You-
too complicated?
Well, I don't think it's too complicated. I think the kind of sweet spot that you'd be navigating.
Have a billing system that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think if you're gonna do the 35-gallon cart,
yeah.
you got the overflow bags. I think Jan is right. If you're gonna force them to
Stephanie,
do it,
Jan.
I'm sorry, Stephanie is right. That if you're gonna do it, force people to do it. Go to the
But then they
35-gallon
want
and get them to
Conversation
reduce.
about-
Then they wanna charge
Yeah.
I
us
was
to
very
pick
much
up
in
those
favor of
bags.
35
though.
gallons.
35.
She was adamant.
But if you do, it's not that small, and if you
No,
do
I'm-
64, then people are gonna.
No,
fill
no,
up
I'm
60.
saying, I mean, look, I don't live in town, but I've not used the 35-gallon, but
Uh-huh.
if, from my own experience, people would, I think, feel like they're restricted.
Oh, that's why I'm.
And that's what's in
You
it,
could
yeah.
give them both options, to pay an annual fee to have the second cart or use the overflow. bag.
Yes.
I
And
mean,
we just have to make sure that if we are doing that, that the contract supports it, because now what
Yeah.
contracts are doing is that if they have to pick up 2 barrels, then they're gonna charge you for 2 barrels. They're not
Okay.
gonna charge you for the 1 barrel.
Right,
So now you have to
Yeah.
make sure that you're taking into consideration that cost, so not only
I-
the cost of the cart, but the cost to
cost of the-
distribute the cart and the cost to pick up the cart,
Okay.
now get factored into your contract.
Because that second cart is shared by everybody.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Not as you pay as you go.
Well, and we can actually get to what Malden does, so.
maybe that cart is sure bad.
That trash disposal is
That
shared
pickup,
by the
that
rest of us.
second-
So if we're doing this so that everybody pays their way,
Oh,
now
I
I'm
got it.
paying to pick up somebody else's second card.
Well, no,
Which I already am.
but we said we are gonna charge them for that cart.
You're charging them for the card, not the disposal.
No.
But-
But then we can get into that, we can also talk that you still have to put pay as you throw back in that card, there's different kind of thing. There's, yeah, so this is the point. We can-
I feel like one of each card
Yeah.
is the way to go.
And I think this is further down the line conversation, but there's,
Right.
yeah, point being, there's so many ways, and this is awesome that we're thinking about it, to structure a program that makes sense. But again, you are trying to avoid kind of the situation of, you don't wanna do too much where you flirt back to being unlimited trash. You don't want people pissed off, you know,
Right, we don't.
but also you don't want to just give people unlimited trash and then your numbers don't change at
No,
all.
yeah.
And
How
then
do you find
then
that
you still have to
healthy-
do a trash.
Well,
And Jones doesn't want to pay. for
After our
space
last
trash.
meeting.
Yeah.
I paid very close attention to what's going on in the neighboring communities, and I think West Newbury does 135 trash, 135 recycling. I think Georgetown does
you
the
think
same
those have
thing.
35?
I do.
Usually the recycling's a little bigger.
I know, but you look at those containers and they're almost
Yeah.
exactly the same. size.
Oxford is two
I
sixty-four.
know, but that's Boxford, they tried to do
But it's,
something else. and
They tried to
were
do
both over
stickers
there.
and they abandoned. that.
Yeah,
but now we have 232s, so it's equal to
But
one.
I think
Yeah.
we charge an annual fee if you want an extra barrel. It's
Yeah.
I only see,
somewhere
I only see
saw
when I
it.
drive by and have two.
Yeah.
No, I saw the contract, I have the contract.
Yeah.
So if-
Pay an annual fee if they want the second
I,
part.
annual, every year.
I
you pay,
believe so.
you're not subsidized.
How does the overflow bag, like, let's say we want to give people the option, like, to have, like, for an overflow bag, for example, does it go on top of the barrel?
yeah, so it'll go on top of the haulers now typically are pushing it to be on top of the
So they can
barrel.
still pick it up?
They can still pick it up and going automated, so there's all these different, like, kind of like logistical.
That's-
And how much
that's
is the bag?
doable.
The bag typically in these communities?
And it depends on community, could range from like,
It wouldn't be
$3 to
overflow
$6 for a
bags,
pack
maybe
of what,
just the same
We
bag.
were doing
Uh,
like 5 for
about-
12.50 or
cost-
something like that.
yeah.
So I bought it. 5 for 12.
Oh, 5 for 12. I thought you said 5 to 12.
Yeah.
Your bag.
Yes, we're getting the money and no, 5 for 12.50, I thought was what we had.
yeah, and then we'll get to a point where we'll see what Malden does, they have kind of interesting model, that we'll see at the end, but
Okay,
yeah. So we go to the next one. So again, this is kind of generally, this idea that also as you pull things out of you're not paying tipping fees, there's also just municipal cost savings to be had with that when you're paying less in tipping fees. So this is kind of a breakdown of if you have a $103 tipping fee, then you're saving every ton that you avoid is saved. Again, some of this you'll see it again in recycling rates, but recycling rates are almost always going to be cheaper per ton than pay as you throw. And pay as you throw is just generally gonna incentivize waste reduction. So we can keep going. And now I kind of want to pivot into the environmental impact, and this is something I was really appreciative that you kind of called attention to last time. Stephanie was like, we need to be, the financials is such a big like piece of it, and it's important, and that's how the decision gets made. And I think there's a huge case of pay as you throw as the financially sustainable decision to make for a municipality. But also we shouldn't lose sight of the environmental impact of it. And so for this, I was kind of even thinking in my head, like reduce, reuse, recycle was something that was drilled into our heads for decades. And I think somehow we forgot the word reduce. Like it just kind of like slipped all over our vernaculars. And I think this is kind of a way to bring it back, and pay as you throw is a way to bring it back into the conversation. That like, oh yes, behaviorally, I should be considering how I can reduce my waste. And it goes back to the larger conversation of shrinking capacity and rising costs, but also some of the environmental impacts. So if you go to the next slide. So again, and because again, for some people that this is equally as, or if not more important of
Than the
a lens than the financial. So it's an important piece to consider too. So when you kind of take so this is using the EPA's WARM model. So when we're talking about a 10%, 20%, 30% reduction in total tonnage and tying that to what's the metric tons of carbon equivalent that's taking out of the atmosphere, what that means. So for example, that 30, and this is in a single year. So let's say that 30%, say all of a sudden, say in 4 years from now, Groveland's tonnage was at 1740,
Yeah.
right? Next slide, what's that going to look like? So that's 600,000, and this is in 1 year. So then if they had 30%, so then this kind of compounds when you start thinking of it like every year, like, oh my gosh, if we didn't do anything differently, this would have been, that's 230 tons this every single year compounding. Because if it was still at 2,000, because you didn't make a change, or because towns don't make changes. So it's more than just 230 is kind of my point, but that's 600,000 miles of a gas powered vehicle, 500,000 pounds of coal burned, 46 homes electricity, and 11,000 propane cylinders. So when I was thinking, and I know you can see, like, once you start compounding these, you can really start to feel the weight of not even just pay as you throw, but just like this general like waste reduction mindset. It has real environmental impacts. And that's why I think it's cool to talk about, is that it's, like I said, there's an environmental and a financial component and a fairness, which we'll kind of see in the summary. The next one, and again, this is kind of the utility model. So when you're pitching it, or once you have the program implemented, whether someone's main lens of what they want to do is, oh, I kind of want to save some money by buying less pay-as-you-throw bags, or I want to reduce my carbon footprint. The model is the same. What they should do to achieve that is find ways to have less waste, compost, recycle more, bring things to thrift stores, find way, be more conscious as you consume. And they don't necessarily have to be thinking about it as much, because
It becomes.
you're kind of, reteaching people to consider that reuse. So the people's goals could be different, but the results are the same. So next slide. And so this is kind of what we're getting into structuring programs. So yeah, I probably envision for Groveland, it'd probably be more something along the lines of, hope you to talk about getting those nice recycling carts, like 96 gallons or 60, the bigger recycling carts. But just for example, so you can see this Long Meadow, they did pay as you throw back in 2006. They have 35-gallon carts with overflow bags. Serves 96% of the household. And then so how they're paying that is there's still a little bit out of the tax base, pay as you throw bags, and they also have a transfer station access fee tied into that. So that's one way. That's one way. If you go to the next one, we see Malden is a bit of a unique model. I know maybe someone said the tags didn't work in another town.
The stickers.
The stickers, but so they instead of a sticker on a bag, what they did is a sticker on a cart. So in the sense of, if you have a cart, you have the 35-gallon. If you were doing a full pay as you throw, because then there's also modified pay as you throw, which would mean you don't need to necessarily put pay as you throw bags in, even though like from a waste reduction standpoint, that's kind of the gold standard. But what they would say is, okay, you have your cart, you're supposed to put pay as you throw bags in there. But if you don't want to go to the store and pick up pay as you throw, they kind of mathed it out so that say you put in one bag a week or 2 bags a week, but I think they did the math of one. If you put in 1 bag a week, you could instead just buy a sticker for the same cost. I think it was like $150 a year or something is how it mathed out for them. And then you could just put in normal bags instead. So you're kind of like getting ahead of not having to pay. You don't have to have people go in and buy the bags, but they're still paying that same pay as you throw model. So point being, it kind of takes a little more explaining. It's a different way, totally different way to do it. But the point being, there's different ways to structure this program. I don't think we need to figure out how Groveland would structure a program like this, like if they even, you guys do pay as you throw, but just to say that it's definitely not like a one size fits all kind of thing.
Is that more difficult for the hauler though? They gotta look at the sticker.
Yeah, I don't imagine.
Seems like a
But
very
complicated.
complicated.
Technology now to see it.
Oh.
Yeah, there is a lot more camera technically. So they have a camera on the back of their dumpster typically now so they can see see what's going into it. So that's, I have never heard of haulers really complaining
About
about,
having both, like some people will put the pay-as-you-throw bags in and other people have the sticker on them.
yeah, I think they kind of, they,
Works.
yeah, it works, like they
Okay.
adjust to it, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of in summary, we talked, so pay as you throw, it's gonna encourage these kind of waste diversion activities, it's gonna push people towards recycling, push people towards compost and just generally other diversion activities. There's this improved environmental air quality piece of it. We kind of talked about with the greenhouse gases, general less air pollution from incinerators. You go to the next one, I think I switched my little icons here. That was supposed to be the environment. This one was supposed to be fairness and money. But and I think that fairness is when you kind of mentioned it, like, why should the Jones pay for the Smith's trash? And like, I think that is a real one of, from a resident's perspective, I think that's a really good pitch for it. Like a lot of it, I think is the municipal perspective, like, I think it makes a lot of sense as like avoiding an override, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like residents might not care as much about that, but I think that argument of like, wait, yeah, they are putting out 6 tons of I would never pay for their water bill, why am I paying for their trash bill?
Right,
And then, so I think that's a big piece of it,
yeah,
that I think speaks to residents, and then just kind of like that general is, yeah, pay as you throw, the data's in, communities gonna go pay as you throw.
right,
Your trash tonnage is gonna go down, we can't give you, like, the numbers vary, but it's the reason Mass DP supports it for grant funding is because the data's in that it significantly reduces tonnage, which then reduces disposal
right.
costs.
And then the other argument that people say that people will be dumping, but they've been studying this and they haven't found that to be the case. The dumping, it doesn't go away, but it doesn't increase as a result of this kind of.
Yeah, well, especially when that's when you have a pay as you throw back, like, I think that's the kind of the appeal of making it a full pay as you throw is. It's gotta be in the bag, like, if it's gotta be in the bag, then you really, you still have to buy that, but you still have to like purchase that pay as you throw. Bag.
Yeah, we're in an unfortunate contract where we pay more for our recycling.
Yeah, that's not gonna stay. Arthur and Rebecca are on this contract in the working group.
It just like happened and it's like so bad.
Because it's based on market prices, so. it
No, and
fluctuates.
there's all these added things like that processing fee or
No,
whatever.
that, well, that's it kind of stays kind of.
I'm just looking at other contracts that don't have one.
Yeah, this is, you guys are gonna have the opportunity to get a much better contract.
Researching that, and there's ways, our contract was not, I don't know how it came to be, but it
It
wasn't,
came to be very badly.
yes, it
Yeah,
wasn't,
it was tough.
actually,
Can I
us
take a
and
picture of the
Salem
previous slide?
share.
Yes, and I'll
same
send these out.
exact,
Oh, you will?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Percentages on
yeah.
our,
Part of the
blended values.
listing with.
Oh, really?
Is like, you
yes,
guys
and
can
we
use
got- I
this.
mean, At
in,
some
you know,
point,
intermediate
got
conversations
sold
between
the
now and
same-
I come
Mr.
back.
Birdie.
contract
It's
as
really good.
Awesome, I'm glad to
I'm
hear
working with
that.
Sam on,
You can
but.
send it.
Yeah, I'll send this
Yeah,
out for
We've been
sure,
trying to
yeah.
figure out.
Yeah, I know Sam's been all over that.
Yeah, so we realized that we got dealt the same type of contract, and then we have an opportunity now to renegotiate, and
Right.
that's something we're gonna bring up.
Right,
That those values that we were given were unfair in comparison to what's really going on. Those numbers don't change, but what they call the MRF, the
Yeah,
MRF.
MRF is actually processing is a different percentage than what we are paying.
Okay.
So we have options.
right. And I think I thought you mentioned that like that, just by us all being here, giving up our free time meeting, like before in the past with trash contracts, we just go to
100, oh, here's the
whoever was in charge, we go just
sign of all, yeah.
get it done, get us another hauler. And then when the last financial director left, and then we ended up in the interim director kind of thing, we were trying to negotiate a new contract. It actually fell onto the select board.
Yeah,
And it was unfortunate because, we're looking at like the pickup cost, we're like, oh, okay, well, can you slide that to another year? And we're not really reading all the
Yeah.
fine print. I'll be honest, we're looking at
Yeah,
it
this is.
as quickly as,
Lot.
Well, it was done at the 11th hour.
it was the 11th hour, people were screaming,
After
trash was
promises.
getting picked up, it was
It was
bad.
only gonna go
It's
up
like
3% per
it's-
year.
Yeah,
which I said, that's BS. Dawn,
So
and the reality hit us that, no, it's 7% plus.
But you know, like if,
Yeah, it was bad.
yeah, and there was certain things in that contract that weren't put in, there's a liquidated damages in there, there's a lot of stuff that was not.
No, it wasn't.
I saw some of the markings that were in some
And
of
it
your
was kind of
files today,
serious,
and
too.
yes, it's fascinating, the things that
Yeah,
you see
we
in
didn't get
contracts that you don't see in other contracts.
Yes. And and I went through it, I probably researched about 20 communities and what they do and what they have. So, and then.
Good.
But it
found-
requires a level of knowledge that. we
But
don't
see, that's, I
have.
think you put out one of our first meetings with us, that we're gonna be better off this time around because
Absolutely, yeah, well,
we're
yeah.
doing all this
What-
instead of just shoveling it
And
onto
now a
someone
lot of us
else's.
know more.
Well,
Yeah,
this
this
is
is the
a lot
hauler's
of-
worst nightmare, is people coming.
I don't know, right?
No, the haulers
like
don't
it.
like when you.
So we get
other
t-shirts
communities
that
too,
say that.
because they take advantage of communities,
That's right.
right? And then once, because they don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
Right.
So once they start talking to each other, we're like.
No, truly.
No,
They told you that? No, they told us that too, and they've been trying to, like, there's certain things in that blended value where if it was done at a lower, it was talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars over that.
Right.
Like,
Mhm.
that we've spent now,
Nuts.
because we were just, and
We didn't know.
we didn't know, no one, knew. And like, up to, you know, it was 3 months ago when I started, like, you might have just thought that was normal, but until
Yeah.
you start saying, we're in that working group.
Yeah.
When I brought it up, first, I'm like, why do we have 24%? On our glass, say, right, which is,
Yeah.
and anybody else have that? And we're like, no, we got lower, like, well, why are we paying that? And furthermore,
Okay.
Furthermore, what is the MRF actually processing in reality? You know, and that's what we're gonna try to negotiate going
Okay.
forward.
Yeah, so there's a lot, really.
It's a lot.
And it's awesome. So as I said, Arthur and Rebecca are putting in the work to like really understand what's going into this.
Thank
I guess my other issue too is enforcement. We have so many people who are not enforcing it all right now. And with pay as you throw, the carts, automated, overflow bags, overthrow bags. It'll be automatically enforced.
Yeah,
Like we won't have to worry about,
The
yeah.
hauler,
like my neighbor
and
with the
again,
3 giant trash barrels.
You don't have to worry
That's not
about
gonna be a thing
So
anymore.
that's kind of what we would like to focus on at the next meeting is that, you know, in talking and listening to the committee and hearing feedback and just the information that's come out from Mass DEP and other. We really think that we need to focus on the next step. And when we talked and we created the committee through the select board, it was a real focus on, you know, driving costs down in addition to waste reduction as well. And so in order for us to take that next step with pay as you go, we really need to figure out whether or not we are going to an automated system. So automated pickup, because that is the way that the industry is going. And if we go out to bid with something different, then we could see ourselves in a situation like other communities where their contract prices go through the roof, even more so than what we currently have. So if we are going to move forward in this direction, it would be beneficial for the town to consider whether or not they do want to potentially renegotiate currently and take advantage of some savings to purchase the carts, whether or not we do not want to do that. We want to move forward with negotiating and going out to bid and to have those carts as part of what we have for the contract and bake that into the price. Or do we want to go down the pathway of trying to find other grant funding to supplement that cost? But as we said, that's not an immediate type of situation because you're only getting, if you're doing a 35 gallon, you're only getting not even the full price of the cart from the Mass DEP grant, and you have to have a pay as you throw, which is going to be hard to sell with people when the system's already kind of in flux. So we need to figure out kind of what path we're going. So in order to continue more so of the pay as you throw, we really need to understand, are we moving to automated, how we're purchasing the carts, and how we can then implement everything in a cohesive manner. So one, that we can educate efficiently to the residents, because as we discussed just 2 seconds ago, there's so many moving pieces that people aren't gonna understand, wait, I'm getting this, but then I'm doing this, but then you tell me I'm gonna do this. And so to kind of, again, streamline, like, no, first we're focusing on this. Then we'll continue to deep dive into how we can do that, and then kind of slowly build. Even to Amber's point earlier, you have to start small. And the first step in this particular instance is the carts. So are we going to move to the automated? Are we gonna go to the different sizes? What are we gonna do? And then we start to get more involved with the pay as you throw.
I think the first box you check, and it's gotta be a no-brainer, is automated pickup.
Yeah.
So, yes, I mean, yes, and I was thinking about this, like, I like the baby steps, but there is one step that we would take that we could not fix, and that's if we went to a giant barrel instead of a smaller barrel. So like, I feel like if we went the smaller barrel route with the pay-as-you-throw and the overthrow bags, like we could work towards that, but if we immediately got giant barrels, we can never back up again. And then we will always have those giant barrels that people are trying
And
to
like
fill.
we just discussed, there's multiple different ways that you can structure that. You could do the 64 and 96, you could do the 64, the 64, the 35 and 64, the 35 and 35. It really is what you're recommending
So
to
that feels stressful
move
though.
forward, but it's the
I think,
cost
I
of
think
the
if we,
arrows
maybe
as well.
we work together, we can put this
Yeah.
all up in a,
What I'm thinking
format.
is. The
we can
thing,
actually.
What our options would be.
Yeah, like put in the options are, what, how is it gonna look, maybe, look at what a 35-gallon.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, we are in here.
Actual cards.
See an actual car, that's why I thought like,
Let's see.
yeah, because now where I live, I got delivered when I was on vacation, I came home to a 96 gallon recycling bin, which
Big.
is ginormous. You're like, my kid's like, oh my God, it's big, but I tend to fill it, it's bi-weekly.
Because it's too
Right,
much.
that's the
So-
thing, if we go bi-weekly, then.
Yeah, so the 90, and I get bi-weekly, so it's 96, so there's things that I think we should.
It's another variable.
Decide what do you guys want and how it looks and like,
Well,
so.
I mean, could we go like say that what we're trying to do is plan for the next 5 years? Cause I mean, you can always trade out bins to go bigger, right?
Well, I mean, it's-
Yeah.
That's it, the bins
Yeah.
are for like a
Defensively.
good 10 years.
Okay,
Like,
so-
I mean, I
like-
put my name
Alright,
up for a recycling
alright, well, you
bin
could
for
give
25
people another
years.
recycling bin if you had to.
You could very much so, and that's
Because-
kind of what we're trying to say, is that
Yeah.
we wanna run a parallel course with what the committee wants to do in terms of a pay-as-you-throw.
Yeah,
But in order to get to that stage,
We
we
need the
need to
funds.
identify the structure and what we're doing moving forward.
right.
Because it's just going to become too much and we're gonna miss opportunities and miss funding opportunities
Mhm.
if we don't kind of focus in
Right.
and narrow down
So-
what is it that we need to
so-
do next.
Yeah.
What folks would see, let's say, for example, we said, okay, we're gonna go automated pickup, and we worked out the pricing scheme, right? What they would see on the warrant is the adjusted pickup cost. We could break it out from the trash cost, we could have the haul cost and then, you know what I'm saying?
So if
Oh.
the town
If-
decides to
yeah,
move forward
yeah,
with
yeah.
renegotiating the current contract,
Yeah.
there could be a potential to take the monies that would be allocated, yes, and put them towards the purchase of. the car
Correct.
In addition to,
Right, that's what I'm saying,
Yes.
so I mean, to me, like, keep it simple, stupid is the best way, so like. It seems like you should go to the 35-gallon trash, but give an option, an annual fee or something like that, annual fees that you're not paying for the pickup. There's somebody that wants 2 cans, whatever that fee should be, we tie it to some type of unit pricing, something that reflects. What additional charge we expect from the hauler if somebody wants to have the 2 barrels on recycling.
so that's
So
kind of
that-
what we wanted to do the
Yeah.
next meeting, is give you
Yeah.
a presentation similar to
That-
what Brian did
I-
for more of the pay-as-you-go, but for the automated and what that could look like, so that the committee could then decide what they would like to
Right.
recommend to the select board, because the select
Right.
board would ultimately, if in fact it was a renegotiation effort, would be through the select board.
Right.
If it's not, and it's just, we want to go out to bid and this is what we want, that's still a good step for us to take, so that we know this is how we're moving forward. Then next step, we can go back into more detail about the liquidated
Right.
damages, more detail about the composition of it, audit, more detail about all the other things we'd like to go out to bid for.
But I think if we looked at what the avoided cost could be, if we open the contract out, the automated pickup, that might be a very attractive number to folks, because I think the last few years of the contract are where the pickup cost. If I remember right, Bill, we asked them to charge us the most in the last few years, because we didn't have the funding for the first 2 years.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing. We're like, okay, we can't afford this. Can
We
you
had
push
the-
this cost out further?
Yeah, a lot of.
We honestly just asked them to do,
Yeah.
we asked them to just shovel it forward like a snowbank,
Yeah.
Well,
and that's where you see what you
Oh.
see.
11th hour,
We were at the, we were in the back.
we really didn't have a lot of options at that point. Our
No,
interim finance administrator had walked out the door, leaving us with a false sense of security. And then reality hit us when we realized that it's not gonna be 3% each year for the next 5 years. It's gonna be more like 10% per year over the next 5 years. And then we kind of tried to get creative with them and say, can you give us a lower percentage at the beginning and build it up so that we have time to accumulate funds and plan for this.
But our
But-
friend at the carts place, is Lou, yeah. Is it possible, no, really, he's a great guy.
Yeah, It's fantastic.
Is it possible for Lou to provide us with those samples?
3 of them.
So we could have them.
35,
Right,
64, and 90.
in front of us.
64 gallons.
We need to stop talking in cerebral stuff and see the
Yes.
actual
Right.
size of the cart.
That's a very.
And people can actually move it. Okay, let's look at the 96-gallon one and see if this feasible for the town. or
Well,
not.
And I was
Because
thinking,
if we have those in front of us, I think it's gonna really clarify to everybody what is the best path forward. And now is the time to get some of these decisions made.
Yes,
If we don't start with these decisions, we're just gonna keep floundering around.
I
Yes.
agree.
So if that's possible, I'd be happy to help with that, whatever, but if he could do that, I think it would really kind of cut through some of our confusion, because it's hard to picture them if you don't see them side by side.
100%, consider it done.
and I was thinking too, if we decide to offer people the option of leasing or paying for an extra barrel, maybe they figure out by the end of the year that they don't need the extra barrel. maybe
exactly,
they can
that's
give it
why I
back.
want to be
Like
like,
that could be an option.
yeah, I want it to
Okay.
be not by the barrel, you pay an annual fee. That's right.
And then we had talked last time too about looking if we're gonna split a waste from a recycling RFP, like waste RFP.
But see, that's
recycling
a,
RFP.
so here's what I mean, right now, I think, let's focus on this barrel thing.
Mm.
Okay.
I just
The
wanna make
automated
sure,
pickup thing, and then the next decision point is, are we or are we not going to consider reopening the contract to capture some savings? If we are,
for the extra
we're
year.
still, that's not saying we're not gonna go out to bid, we're just gonna go out to bid probably a year later than we otherwise would have.
That gives more time.
But
Maybe Lou could also give us some ideas too, like
Yeah.
what do municipalities do? When they go this route, they buy new barrels for everybody. What do people do with their old barrels?
So they do have systems in place where they arrange for them to collect them.
Okay,
You
so
can
that
keep
would
them
be
for
good
Other
if we
uses, or you
know
can do
that.
that.
That was in
I
one
know
of
they
those.
did that.
I wanna keep it because they.
They just bought 'em.
And they can do
But
that.
other people won't have room to keep
So
it.
they'll do like a street like notification that on this date,
Yeah.
that street will get their trash barrel picked up if they leave it at the curb, and then another one will be placed in its place if they want to take it.
That would be
If they don't,
great
then
to
they'll
know.
Replace it with a
But
new one.
I know.
these ones that they provide, these cards, they're like even, are they more structured than what most people
They're
think
heavy.
they're about?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
are.
so people that are like,
Like
my
most
husband is
what?
attached to the barrels that he bought because he thinks they're so wonderful. We need to educate them that these new ones are even more. You're gonna love this barrel even
But
more.
people are gonna be wondering, what am I gonna do with my old stuff?
I know,
Especially
well,
if
they-
it's limited space.
It's one of
Yeah.
those files that you said they pick up the old barrels, but.
they will, yeah. they
And
know.
everything's been heard, that's like, I mean, it's a great point, and it's definitely applies to going automated and barrel sizes, and especially pay as you throw is everything's been heard before, you know what I mean? In the sense of like, there's definitely, you know, and because they're good, they're all like valid concerns, but it's like, there's definitely a lot of support for a lot of the different answers, but it's awesome to keep throwing them out, to keep.
Yeah,
throwing them
well, I
out
think
there,
people are gonna be wondering this. People that haven't had the, the privilege of being in a
For sure,
roundtable for this many months.
yeah.
Are gonna
Right.
be thinking things like, well, what the heck am I gonna do now?
Exactly, that's why one of the big like pieces of it is definitely just like, at least as it comes to like pay as you throw is, I mean, it was the same thing with anything, we was talking about like education, like, yeah, like. Like have, like, that's one of the big recommendations for particularly pay as you throw is like, when you go to it as a community. Have meetings during the year, let people come and like give their
Yeah.
opinions, just
Yeah.
don't hide it, don't like drop it and say all of a
Right.
sudden, so I think you've hit the nail on the head on that, it's like, it's not just like, any of these changes shouldn't just be like, here's what we're doing.
Right,
It
right.
should be this like, here's like, cause I think like, yeah, inviting them to understand the rationale for making.
Well, Kathy's supposed to present at the next select board meeting anyway, right?
And we should be using
You know,
this medium. as
And that was the
well,
point, and that was this, yeah.
but I will
able
need
to
decisions
inform, educate, and retrain.
from here probably before
Like,
I, because if I presented the select
You
board.
wanna
meeting-
wait,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to know like what, if I go
We're
both
going
ways at
automated.
once, it's not gonna go.
No,
well.
you're right.
A 5-member select board, you know what I'm
So
saying, right?
maybe you can go to them with something you guys decide on here, and the information we kind of. talked
Well,
about.
by the next meeting, yes, that's what I'm thinking, but I know.
Well, it won't be by the next.
She's ready to go.
Not by your next meeting.
No, it won't be ready for our next one.
Our
That's-
next
I think
meeting,
that's
then the
okay.
meeting after that,
It may be the meeting, well.
after our next meeting.
After our next meeting, then the select board meeting, because I would like it to be as concrete as possible. I mean, even if it's like two options you want them to consider, you know, or if it's just one option. You know what I'm
Well, are
saying?
they,
Listen, I know with the board you're dealing with, the simpler the better.
The simple-
are they voting on things or are we?
They would vote on
things?
if we
So
want.
yes, they have to
So-
vote. This committee is only making a
We're
recommendation.
advisory, got it.
Right, but if we want to vote to reopen the contract, that's a vote that then we could give. If we did decide to do that, if the cost savings looked,
Move favorable.
yeah, if
Okay.
they looked reasonable to move on that path, that would kind of start to straighten out how we're heading.
A big step, every step takes us
Correct,
in a.
correct, because right now we've done a lot of information gathering.
Yeah.
You know, and now we have you.
Oh, well,
No, I'm serious. We actually, yes, we needed more, no, so let me just.
None taken.
She needed a partner in crime here to
Oh.
help with this.
None taken, like I said, you've been
And
great.
your background obviously is going to really
Well, I think-
benefit the town.
I think what happens with
Time.
with trash, you know, is, I think when you talk about it, it's one of those things that everybody's affected by.
Mhm.
So. I think-
Right, well, back in the day, we would just chuck it on somebody's desk, whoever was, you know, the administrative person of the
Yeah,
day.
and it's a big chunk,
Yeah.
of change within the budget.
Yeah, and it didn't used to. It used to
Yeah.
be, you know, a couple $100,000, it was like.
Yeah.
Trash.
And it's gonna keep going, yeah, probably,
Now it's like-
probably see 30% increase in the next contract, so it's like no joke on how it's going up.
I don't know, what's our highway department, probably this has our highway budget now.
Yeah.
Trash, just for trash, you know, he's starting to look at how much of the budget it's chewing up.
How much of the school budget is trash related?
Right,
Again, if you can get them on that program, it's a win-win-win
it's a
because it
wiggle.
lowers
Yeah.
the taxpayers' cost in the regional school district budget, and it lowers the taxpayers' cost as far as the budget within the town.
Well, do you think that that's like something that Jonathan Seymour would have as facilities manager? Those
It-
trash-
I wouldn't, it's something I wouldn't bring to the principals in a regional school.
No,
because
I
I would
would
try to
think
get an audience with Mr. Seymour or Dr. Bartholomew, because
See what the
those
cost
are
is.
those are your decision makers. You know, they can implement it and push that down to
Wow.
schools
I don't know, I
as
remember.
opposed to pushing it up.
My principal, Lydia
You
said,
gotta get the
oh,
buy-in.
welcome to the environmental club.
You gotta get somebody at the school that's actually gonna oversee it. That's what we run into in Salem. Is that there's just nobody in the cafeteria that wants to take on that task. you know?
That's hopefully you get the volunteers, some of the mothers or fathers or.
Well, does the high school have environmental club? I know Whittier does it. That's the next step, I think.
Yeah, you can offer
environmental-
the older students some incentive to be, you know, mentors to the younger students.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, it was
I'm not.
Yeah.
where they did it in Salem.
Did we
the school,
cut
they
into
did it,
your?
it was like-
Nope, I think we're good. I was pretty much wrapped up. So guys,
Kindle
was-
some additional links for you guys. I'll share out the
Yeah.
PowerPoint.
They-
Some additional links.
So.
Right.
But yeah, I'll share this out and I'll kind of wait to hear next steps.
Getting the
You
adult-
guys, I know
Right,
we talked
that's what
about,
we have
if you want me to talk to other people, or if you want,
Yes.
if you want to meet with me in the meantime between other meetings to go over questions and stuff, I'm totally a resource to have spend as much time talking about this kind of stuff, so.
I need to know what we're bringing to the work.
That's-
That's that's what I need to know. What is the message? Because if the once we have the message, we can make a presentation
Thank you very much.
and.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for listening.
It's good.
Maybe.
Thank you.
I got a question for you about the Manchester Essex compost thing. What, they gave them actual land in town?
So they had a
Focused on the pay.
transfer station. They moved, they were like moving their transfer station.
No, but. well,
So yeah,
but-
they gave them land on town.
If you're talking about the
Yeah.
parks, then I think that.
They're trying to
on the
kind of
parks,
find
then
other
I can
towns.
get with the select
Well, I've
board
heard
to
through the
talk to
grapevine,
maybe
they're trying to find
further.
other towns to do that so that they can kind of set up this like
Definitely.
network of like
Gotta know what
places to bring
together.
in.
Every-
Yeah, you gotta-
this
you gotta
Contract
make a
alone
decision.
is one of
Bet we had
those-
Sewell Street before they filled it in.
It would make sense to do it here with the three towns that are in our regional school district and make a regional compost site.
Who are the
So he would be there for
Merrimack,
that.
West Newbury, and Groveland.
That would be better use of the coordinator. I mean,
Okay.
Brian, I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah.
But,
Try to
yeah,
regionalize
this
things.
part, but yeah.
Is
Yeah,
because
I believe it.
Well, the thing is, if
I
you,
believe it.
if your option is, if
Fiefdoms.
you, if we come to, you guys.
They don't wanna
You gotta pick
these kingdoms.
35 gallon plus pay as you go. It's like the
One sovereign cities in town, but don't tell
me how
to operate my town, and I won't tell you how to operate
No
yours.
pay as you go,
Right,
It's
they
true.
don't need pay.
I don't think, I'm guessing in what.
Because right now you have 60. Right now you have 64, right?
Right, two 32.
So
Yeah, well,
And cool.
if you need to add any pay as you go right now.
Right now, we don't have to add anything to it except the pickup cost is, next year's will be, what is this year, 600, and goes up to almost $1 million, doesn't it?
No, I'm saying that volume wise from each home, if people are now putting out 64.
Yes,
And then you just, and then you come in with the automated, you replace it with 64,
yes,
then arguably.
there's no change.
Are they adding more?
Right, well, that's right.
Or,
I thought we,
That's what I,
thought if we went to the automated pickup during the current contract, if we wanted to do that.
Yeah.
We would just offer the 32 with the option, that if you felt like, if you were worried, let's say honestly, somebody's worried, oh my,
Yeah, but-
I don't think I can do this. I think I need another one. Okay, for, $50 a year, I think that's what 50.
yeah, and this is one of the options.
You can lease an extra barrel for the year.
Yeah, whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's a good compromise.
and
Well, I think you-
then we
you
do
need to lay
have the
these- all these
overflow bags
options
for
out.
the.
Yeah.
our-
One by
Yeah.
one and then.
Those occasions.
It might be a little mix and match kind of
Yeah,
thing. It
you
might be
can-
like, I think there's a.
Yes.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe that opportunity is an internal discussion. We don't put that out to the public.
Yes.
Until they come to you and say, this is not working out, and say, okay, here's what we'll do for you. Because if you,
That's a great-
if you put it out there in the public, everybody's gonna come to you and say, I need that extra barrel, in my opinion.
Not if they have to pay, they're not going to.
Well, maybe
No.
not.
I feel
Maybe
like
not.
some people
I don't know.
that the resistance will be lessened, I mean, and if you want to call it anxiety over the transition, because talk about trash anxiety, remember remember.
I don't think going to the
The phone
cops is
calls
gonna
and
be the
all-
anxiety. I
It was
really
like,
don't.
it was bad, I mean, people were.
Well,
going
especially if
nuts
it's
about the
64, because
contract
that's what they can do now.
Expiring in our.
I think just going to the cops in general, people will be happy about it because it's gonna make the trash.
Good.
Yeah, I think the carts won't, I'd be surprised if there's like a big like fight, but I think
Yeah.
the 35 will, I think, take some
Plus the
kind of. but-
recycling won't get all wet anymore.
Right, everything's gonna be
No,
better,
it's
but you might
It's
see.
easier to roll it
somebody
out.
Who says, well, I just think that I can't do that, and I don't see why you don't just have a clause that says, if you feel that, then on a year by year basis, you can rent.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting
Year
point is
by-
It
whether,
has to be appropriately
yeah,
Yeah,
cost
whether-
effective
So-
because
Yeah.
otherwise
you don't want everyone to do it and then you're back in the same situation of just having.
everybody would, I think they're pretty.
So
I
one,
mean,
yeah,
The last water bill added a $25 charge, and people have been going
Well,
nuts
I
about
gotta be
that.
honest with you, I don't care about the $25 charge, I care more about the fact that there's PFAS in the
Oh, I
water.
know.
That's,
Well, there
that's-
always has been.
My water
because
bill-
well,
they
now
lower-
it's at a level that it's unsafe.
No, actually, we were, they
Listen,
lowered the acceptable level.
Yeah, they-
But
yeah,
now
okay.
they're doing that.
Right.
We're getting off track though.
forever chemicals in your water.
Yes,
Oh my God, I had a thought about the thing.
but, so the thing is, our next meeting, do we want to focus on this one decision point? Because I think.
I
the
wanna do
select
what
board-
Rebecca said.
I
That's
think,
what wanna
I
do.
think setting up a matrix is like they were talking about where, we have 35, 64, 96, and then you have a little chart. We already know where we checked off this box. We're going with automated, right?
Yeah,
So now we've just got a couple more boxes to check
Right,
off.
exactly.
At that point,
And we'll have
Now,
visuals.
you can fill in these
Yeah,
boxes.
so maybe we'll bring it,
Right.
we'll talk to him, and maybe we can actually see these
I just sent
cans.
the email out to Lou as we were
They
talking.
see these
thank
cans.
you.
And he'll take.
Right.
It's hard to visualize them.
So.
And I think that's where we should
Our
leave it
next meeting,
for now.
There was a decision point for the.
Okay.
And then maybe keep the
Of this
same,
is
same, thing.
For what? I just couldn't hear you.
A decision
barrels,
that
bring it
the
to
select board has to
Yeah.
make.
No, we're gonna decide what our
we're gonna
recommendation is
make
gonna be
recommendations.
for the select.
Okay, but
On
if we're going- Want the,
Like,
Oh,
contract open, we,
Yeah.
Right,
And what
right.
size cards?
Yeah.
okay, yes,
Yeah.
that's what we, I need
Absolutely.
that. and-
Throw away things and recycle.
you want to mitigate that as much as
And
possible.
that was actually.
almost the
Oh
whole.
my God, there's four
that-
people
that will
talking.
be a big one.
Guess what? Secretary can't write
I'm
it all
sorry.
down.
She was just getting clarity that, okay, let's say.
Real form is right.
She clarify, what what are we deciding our next meeting? We're deciding,
Next meeting, to my understanding, we're gonna decide if we feel it is feasible to ask the Board of Selectmen to open up the contract. Why would we open up the contract? Because we're gonna go to automated, correct?
Yes.
And how will we go to automated? We were gonna decide the size of the recycling and the trash barrels.
Correct.
And anything else that goes along with automated collection. And that, I would say, should be the only thing that we work on.
yes,
Next meeting.
that's the agenda.
Yeah, because that's
And we will have
enough.
visuals. And we will be able to bat it back and forth.
Yes.
We can bring our own trash from home if we want. and see
I might.
How it works.
The reason you go to automate is because you save X amount of dollars.
Right, right. We need to have all.
Current contract for the year or whatever,
You can take that money and
by
buy.
the code.
Right, and which ones will give us what in grant money?
Right.
So, you know, we have to decide all that, but I think that is a sufficient amount to do.
The other.
One meeting,
The
I
other
agree with
thing
you.
to find out is if they will pick up 2 trash barrels. If we're like, oh, you can have a second trash barrel, like we have to find out if they will.
It's automated, they will, it's not a problem. What we want to do is cut,
Policy.
not only cut their time, we want to cut a day off their route. With automation, we might be able to do that and save even more money.
I don't know if it's in the contract, they don't really care. I proposed the same thing to them when we spoke,
Yeah,
and they kind of want their guys to all work 5 days a week, 40 hours.
Well, they don't.
And so they,
But
I,
that's their problem, not ours.
But it wasn't
I
always,
told them, I'd say the same, I said the same exact thing to them, and they said.
but that wasn't the only thing they stated, that they stated that with the ability to collect missed pickups, or if there was somebody who put something out, or if there was a bulky waste, for all those types of things could be scheduled because they're already in the area.
Oh, I see, yeah.
In addition to that, so that, there's more to it than just paying them for
but the Friday
for
pickup
bulk.
people will be
Because
so happy not
If
to
you
be on
didn't, if they missed
Friday.
a pickup on one of the days, they wouldn't come back the next day because that's not their typical pickup. So the trash would sit out longer. So that would be more so trying to make sure that there's somebody in the area to pick that up instead of sending a truck and spending more money to pick up the trash.
But like
Now they're
I
always
counted
here.
5 miles across in this town, so why couldn't Friday be like the catch-all?
We could
Or
definitely talk
about
about-
pickup day.
Yeah, pick up
I
whatever you want
proposed to
there.
them, and they did not like that, it should be a 1-day pickup for the whole town. Because that's where I work in Tewksbury, we got a 1-day pickup the whole town.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Everything. 1-day trash day. Wednesday was trashy for the whole town.
Oh,
And I thought
wow.
that was a very
I love
efficient thing, and everybody knew it, everything I could
For
schedule.
how many households?
10,000,
And they did it in one day?
1 day, Republic did it,
Yeah,
I don't see
Oh,
why.
because they have 6 trucks.
automated 1 day.
Waste management can get 6 trucks here in a day. I mean, come on, they're a
They get 20
multinational.
trucks here in a day if they want. They can send a truck per street.
Yeah, well, that's because we let them send truck with half a tire.
I asked them this, I go, why can't you do 1 day? It would be great for us, with this,
oh, that would,
and they said,
Holy shinola.
and they told me, we like to have our guys working and.
Okay, listen, you have contracts in other communities they can work in. They don't have to work in Groveland 5 days a week.
I like the idea of.
Anyway,
fewer
I don't know if
days.
I can renegotiate in this contract, but I think the following contract, something that's. something we wanna Look at.
Absolutely.
Well, if you're on a contract,
Yeah.
maybe it's something we.
Just think about it now, if it's a holiday, boom, just shift it. 1 day, you tell the whole town.
Yeah.
So when I was dealing with a lot too, I was, road projects, I would just know that, all right, Wednesday, we gotta start at 10, not, 7, so.
yeah.
Yeah, if they're doing 10,000 households in a day, I mean,
In recycling too. So
Since we're such a tiny little town,
I hear you. So pulling it back, do we all agree that
yes,
Jan's
yep.
agendas for,
Absolutely.
okay, anything else?
No.
If not, I propose adjourn. Oh, Jeannie.
What's the mellow thing?
That's gonna be decided after the meeting.
So we're not discussing this?
Yeah, we're not gonna.
Okay.
We don't need to. Let's go.
All right, minutes.
We'll go to me.
Move to approve the minutes from September 24th, 2024.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Motion to adjourn meeting at 7:59 PM.
Second.
Then all in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn. Good.